This series of Zoom calls was originally conceived to try to inform the public of the importance of more comprehensive nutrition, which supports engineering and design of life as is coded in our chromosomes or DNA or nucleic acids that are in the center of every cell of every organ of our body. However, as we progressed, we also not only want to inform people of the 39 years that have been put into developing a formulation to add to the modern diet. It's not to replace food, but to add to a diet that is called New Eden. However, we periodically want to get across that we want to address possibly things that are on the public's mind. And so this next session was taken primarily from a long investigative article published in Epoch Times. And with that, we will start with the first slide. The basic topics that we will be discussing are some of the top 10 problems that arose out of the pandemic from the coronavirus spread across the globe, and the measures that were taken to try to cope with this very broad infectious viral disease that it's even controversial how it came about. All the evidence that I've examined, I don't usually call it the coronavirus, I call it the China virus. But these are topics that Marina Zhang, an investigative reporter, has developed, and we will go through them because this is on a lot of people's mind, and we'll talk about it as we go along. Now, they are the major revelations that had finally come to the front by the year 2023, and we will hit on each one of them. The FDA and the CDC developed a very rapid coronavirus vaccine. And almost immediately, people began, particularly physicians, reporting complications. And one of the most adverse events were the presence of strokes after the injection of this new, what they call RNA, or not DNA, but RNA vaccine. Now, the number one spokesman at the White House was a physician that pretty well known now, that even though he's retired, is Dr. Anthony Fauci, which I first became aware of because he was the AIDS czar during the epidemic of acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, which was shortly called AIDS. The big problem that began to arise after his resignation is that he began to publish and make public statements that were diametrically opposite to what he said when he was the president's consultant at the White House. And these statements became a matter of controversy because even fact checkers have been politicized because there were certain fact checkers that would say Fauci is being consistent, and he is saying now just exactly what he said when he was in the White House and advising the president, and the public was carrying out mandates from the federal government. And then there were fact checkers that saying, hey, he's totally changed his position about the benefits of the RNA vaccine and how much distance should be between people and whether masks were a benefit. And so this has really been a problem about what I would call scientific or medical politicalization, because politics really got involved in this. Now, the gold standard for reviews of medical and health problems is the Cochrane Library. And the Cochrane Library, with these specialists listed below, have investigated this so-called pandemic from the coronavirus, and that the Cochrane says that the repeated vaccinations weakened the immune system rather than boosted it to probably prevent, as it was designed to do, infections. That there were experts that said that the DNA contamination was detected in the messenger RNA vaccines, and the FDA sometimes supported this and sometimes questioned it, but there were apparently some investigators discovered that the basic code of life DNA fragments were in the RNA vaccines, and this raised some real questions about could this be confusing to the immune system. Now, the controversy got so high that even the drug companies paid thousands of dollars for individuals claiming health damage due to taking the RNA vaccine. And there became a big controversy when the president took ivermectin with the White House physician, based on anecdotal stories from Europe, particularly in Poland, France, Turkey, and Spain. And I might add, to add a little truth to this, that in August 2022, I contracted the China virus. And before that time, I thought it was just routine flu virus, A or B type, that had been politicized. But I have to say I was wrong. I was the sickest I think I've ever been. And I was at that time in my 80s. And so I'd been around a long time, and I had to jump through circles backwards to be able to find the ivermectin, because many of the pharmacists, because of the FDA's position, would not dispense or even carry ivermectin. And I think it's important that I took it, because there were 5 other individuals that I had worked with, several of them medical professionals, that got the pandemic virus at the same time I did. And lo and behold, they died of strokes. And I was taking Plavix and low-dose aspirin for fact that I had stents in my brain from a stroke in 2010, and just continued taking the anticoagulant. And combined with the ivermectin, it may be the reason I was able to survive while these other individuals died. But importantly, more and more scientific and medical evidence has been presented that the ivermectin which was originally designed for horses and other animals that had parasites, particularly worms. But apparently the additional studies that have been done show more and more evidence that ivermectin is effective against this virus. Now, the mask mandates were uniformly applied, particularly in airlines and lobbies to the airlines, and just about everywhere you went, if you were in public, the federal mandate was that you should wear a mask. Well, in the past medical history, it had been well determined that, particularly in the area of tuberculosis, when there was no effective drug, that if the person had cavitary pulmonary tuberculosis, if they wore a mask, they didn't spread it. And though doctors and nurses would wear a mask, so often the masks are worn because they're doing surgery to invade the protective layer of the skin, and they don't want to breathe any of the potential bacteria that would be in the hairs of the nose, or if you cough or breathe out particles that have bacteria in it, you want it to be kept in the mask. But the scientific evidence was if the individual doesn't have the disease and they wear a mask, it is a very low potential that they would get the virus, that the mask is more appropriate for the person that has symptoms. And yet this was generally required. And one of the things that I found most disconcerting was the mandates that doctors' offices and hospitals and elective surgery was virtually canceled, and even church meetings, while the government or the agencies decided that liquor stores selling alcohol and abortion centers were essential, and they weren't locked down like many other things. And one wonders where people's values are. Now, this is a fact that came out in 2003 that Pfizer finally turned over to the government, not just a few evidences of their work on the RNA virus, but 51,000 pages were finally given over to the government to look into the benefits and shortcomings of the RNA virus that came to light. Now, it was found out that the RNA vaccine, and I might add that we should maybe spend a few moments in normal molecular biology, that the DNA code of life that is in the chromosomes never leaves the nucleus of the cell. However, a complementary copy with a change in the sugar that's from the desoxyribose to the ribose is made, and it goes out of the nucleus to go to the assembly line, which is in the cytoplasm of the cell, which is in three major steps: the ribosome, the endoplasmic reticulum, and the Golgi apparatus. But the RNA is divided into two parts. One part is the instructional RNA, which we described, that controls the assembly line in the cell of how to hook nutrients together to make bioactive compounds that run the biochemistry and the physiology of life. But there is a division of the RNA that goes to the nucleolus and is processed there. And of all things, it's called transport RNA. And remarkably, this transport RNA goes out into the fluid of the cell cytoplasm and into the interstitial space fluid between cells and hooks up to nutrient molecules and elements that will be required on the assembly line and brings them in at the right time to properly assemble the bioactive molecules that carry out the biochemistry and the physiology of life. Now, what is not generally known, and I would not really understand this if I had not been involved in the AIDS pandemic research for Carrington Laboratories, where a research virologist, Dr. Basber Cologne from Southern Research Institute of the University Medical School of Alabama, gave a oral presentation of her 2 papers that were published that she did. And she wasn't just any research virologist. She was given over 300 compounds by the National Institutes of Health to look for some compound that could be used against the AIDS epidemic. And she identified the AZT, which is a sulfa added to thymidine that inactivated the HIV-1 AIDS virus. And so it was made as the first FDA-approved drug for the AIDS patients across the country. However, just like Dr. Cologne had some reservations about telling them about this, because the AZT not only inactivated the AIDS virus, but it killed the cells that were in the tissue culture that they were propagating the AIDS virus and then adding the compound she was given by the NIH. And lo and behold, in Europe, they did a big clinical study and found out that patients, the controls that had no AZT, did better clinically, lived longer, and had a better quality of life with no treatment whatsoever, rather than being given AZT. So AZT passed out of use. However, Dr. Cologne not only published 2 papers on the research she did for Carrington Laboratories with the active ingredient from the aloe vera leaf gel, which was called acetylated mannose, or for short, ACE-mannan, that it inactivated the AIDS virus and the cells lived that they were using in the tissue culture. And she was able to show also that the active ingredient from the aloe vera plant, if combined in the culture with AZT, it took less AZT to inactivate the virus. And with a lower dose, it didn't kill the cells. She also repeated this with herpes virus, that there was synergism with the drug for herpes virus if you had in the culture a small amount of the ACE-mannan. And at this point, I think I should point out that in this process of the RNA being made from the DNA, that there are 2 audit steps. And these are very important. As I say from her research papers, I don't think I could have figured this out if I hadn't heard her oral presentation. But in these audit steps, when the RNA is made, there's a system in the genes to check it. And is it properly made complementary wise for which nucleic acid binds to which nucleic acid, which is meant is the complementary aspect of it. And if it's not properly made, an enzyme is released to clip it out and try again. And of course, you have to have the nutrients in your diet to run this biochemistry, but it will correct to make sure that the RNA is the proper complementary copy made from the DNA. Well, that transport RNA interacts with the instructional RNA, and there is an audit step there. And the science of the RNA virus has been so politicized that Epic Times had to go to two German molecular biologists to write an article that, if I recall, the title was the Trojan horse vaccine is what they called it, because in the second audit step, the RNA that is bringing in the transport that reacts with the instructional RNA, there's an audit step that the very first step in cellular synthesis is how the amino acids are hooked together to make the peptides that become the proteins. And this audit step checks and it determines if this protein to be made is genomic. And what we mean by genomic is this protein in the made in the maternal and the paternal history from the father or the mother. Has this protein been made before? And if it's not genomic, the synthesis is stopped. And that is why the ACE manning worked, according to Dr. Cologne, against the HIV-1 virus. And that is why, if you point out that the coronavirus proteins are foreign, they are not genomic, they were not present in the protein history of the mother or the father. So therefore, it would stop and you would not make the virus protein, which would be the antigen for which antibodies are made, which is part of the theory of vaccines. You have to have the protein antigen that the body recognizes as a virus and makes an antibody against it. But if the RNA audit step, that second audit step, is blocked, the peptide or the protein antigen for the vaccine is not made. So the manufacturers, and this is part of what you find in the 51 pages of Pfizer account, they add substances to the milieu of the vaccine to try to induce the body to go ahead and make these non-genomic proteins that are needed for the vaccine. And that's where they cause, according to these molecular biologists from Germany, the problems with the RNA vaccine arise, because these added substances apparently confuse the immune system, and the various organs and functions of the human body are in balance, a critical balance. And one of the really, as we mentioned about strokes, is that our blood needs to flow through all the capillaries and all to bring in oxygen, take away waste products, and bring nutrients. And it needs to flow. But if you have an injury, it needs to coagulate. So you have two systems in the blood that are in balance. And I really stress this balance. There is the intrinsic coagulation factors that react with prothrombin made in the liver and are constantly going toward coagulation, which you don't want to do You want the blood to flow when you don't have an injury, but you want it to coagulate the blood if you have a penetrating or a cut in the skin. And so in opposition to this intrinsic coagulation, there is a fibrinolytic activity that chops up the molecules that are being enlarged to move toward coagulation. And so anybody's blood, there is, if you test it properly, there are fibrin split products, it's called, that you have a certain low level of this in normal conditions because it's in balance. And this RNA vaccine disturbs this balance, and the coagulation that can lead to strokes takes over, and it's due to this confused immune system. I hope you follow all of that, but this is at the heart of the problem, according to these German molecular biologists. So that is the 10th item that is in this investigative report, that Epic Times had to go all the way to Germany to find molecular biologists that were willing to go on record and actually write a paper, which they produced in their weekly paper, about why the RNA vaccine is causing such problems. And it's this second audit step that the coronavirus protein is not in the history of the mother or the father. Therefore, the synthesis of the peptide that would be served as the antigen for the vaccine doesn't get made properly. Now you say, well, why was this lecture chosen to go through these points of what seems to be on a lot of people's mind, and what as an individual can I do? Well, that's part of our mission with these Zoom lectures. I'd say this first paragraph, that more comprehensive nutrition supports the engineering design of life coded in DNA, the genes that control the assembly of bioactive compounds produced in cellular synthesis that conduct the biochemistry and physiology of life. And we went into a little bit more of the detail of this physiology, of talking about how RNA is made from DNA, and then that the RNA is in two portions, and that there are two audit steps. And in that second audit step, you've got a problem that the normal physiology has to be overcome to try to get the cells to make a protein that is not genomic. And you want this protein be made to make the vaccine proteins that the antibodies are made against. And in this more comprehensive nutrition, the years and decades that have spent on what I advocate with my lectures, that the formulation of New Eden, which is built around aloe-ace mannan, contains other nutrients that are low, absent, or by choice are not present in the American diet. And one good example I use frequently is cruciferous vegetables provide a amino acid that has a sulfur attached to it. It's called cysteine, which is the rate limiting enzyme to produce glutathione, which is very important in the activity of the cell, because the glutathione binds to free radicals that are released when the mitochondria is breaking the bond of carbon atoms, particularly in glucose, though it can do it in amino acids too if the glucose is not available. and it can do it in fatty acids too if you do that. But there's a certain amount of energy between the carbon-carbon bonds that was stored there in photosynthesis from energy in a green spectrum from the sun that hits chlorophyll, and it's transferred. And of course, the mitochondria transfers a little of this energy to a phosphate bond to make ATP, which is so important in our body. It's kind of like a DC battery electrical system rather than an alternative system. But adding New Eden to your general diet boosts the body's biochemical functions. And not only that, that restitutions or healing of any damage that has been done is supported by more comprehensive nutrition, which, as I say, New Eden added to the general diet adds nutrient molecules that are required by the genes to make bioactive compounds. And over time, we have realized that this New Eden added to the diet is the pathway to personal, preventive, and interventional health management. And this is because more comprehensive nutrition is safe beyond compare, is proven in multiple and extended FDA studies. It is effective because in the New Eden formulation, you find nutrient molecules, as we've stated before, that are low in the modern food chain. And so they can be used under control of the DNA to make these bioactive compounds. And nutrition is economical. In fact, economical far beyond anything that experts in health management and medical circles ever dream would be possible, because there's just nothing that can support health that is more economical than to have optimal nutrition. And of course, optimal nutrition avoids the toxic side effect laden, expensive, toxic and in-patent FDA approved pharmaceutical drugs. I hope that this addresses some of the questions that you may have had that are certainly confusing, because there are voices in this politicalization of medicine and science that are on both sides of the fence. Just like, as we said, the pandemic federal advisor, Dr. Anthony Fauci, now that he's resigned, is publishing things and making statements that fact checkers say he's been consistent, just like he was when in the White House. And yet there are other fact checkers saying he's saying things that are 180 degrees opposite to what he said when he was in the White House and was being challenged by so many PhDs and MDs with scientific background. So with that, I bring this topic to an end, and I hope it's been helpful to you to understand problems that we all have faced and worried and wondered about.